So back in 1932, one of the biggest battles in India's freedom struggle wasn't actually against the British. No, it was between two of India's own titans, Mahatma Gandhi and Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. Their showdown resulted in something called the Poona Pact, a document that would go on to shape the future for millions of people, and believe me, it is still controversial to this day. So, let's get into it.
And it all really boils down to this one central question. How on earth did an agreement, one that was supposed to protect the most marginalized people in society, become the source of such a fierce, ongoing debate? I mean, for nearly a century. That's the puzzle we're going to try and piece together right now.
Okay, so to really get this, we've got to rewind the clock to the early 1930s. India is just simmering, the independence movement is really picking up steam, and you can see that Britain is slowly, reluctantly starting to concede power. You can just feel the tension in the air, but also possibility.
And that is the absolute key right there. The struggle wasn't just about getting political freedom from the British. It was an internal fight, a battle for the very soul of what this new India would be. Would it finally break free from the oppressive social structures of its past, or would those old chains just get dragged into the new era?
You see, at the absolute center of this whole thing were millions of people who at the time were called the depressed classes. Today, we know them as Dalits. For centuries, they had been crushed by the caste system, treated as untouchable, and denied the most basic human rights and dignities. And their future? Well, that was the real battleground.
And what's so fascinating is how history has framed this whole thing. It's not just seen as a political disagreement. It really gets framed as this epic showdown, Gandhi versus Ambedkar, a clash that was as much about personal philosophy as it was about politics.
And wow, what a drama it was. On one side, you've got Mahatma Gandhi, the spiritual heart of the independence movement, and on the other, you have Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, a brilliant lawyer and a fierce champion for the rights of the depressed classes because he came from that community himself. Both men wanted to uplift the community, but their ideas on how to get there were just on different planets.
So let's break this down, because their differences were fundamental. Gandhi, he believed in reform from the inside. He started calling the community Harijans, which means children of God, hoping to integrate them into the fold of Hinduism. His goal was to get rid of the practice of untouchability, but not necessarily the caste system itself. Ambedkar, he thought that was nowhere near enough. For him, the only way forward was through political power, legal rights, and the complete and total annihilation of the caste system. He argued that a separate political identity wasn't just helpful, it was essential.
And that really gets to the core of it, doesn't it? Was this just a simple debate between two different types of reform, or was it something bigger? A clash between a reformer on one side and a revolutionary on the other? That's the question that was hanging over everything as these two giants prepared to face off.
So, this wasn't just some academic debate. Oh no, it was about to explode onto the political stage. The scene was the Round Table Conferences in London, where the future constitution of India was being hammered out. And this is where theory was about to collide with some very hard politics.
And the spark that lit the fuse was this thing called the Communal Award. In August of 1932, the British Prime Minister rolls out this plan to give what are called separate electorates to India's various minority communities, Muslims, Sikhs, and, you guessed it, the depressed classes.
So, what are separate electorates? Well, it's pretty simple, actually. It means only Dalit voters could vote for Dalit candidates. And you can see why Ambedkar was all for this, right? For him, this was the only way his community could elect genuine representatives, leaders who answered only to them, not to upper caste voters, and who could have a real, independent voice.
But Gandhi, he was absolutely horrified. He didn't see empowerment. He saw it as the British carving up Hindu society. He was convinced this would create a permanent split, walling off the depressed classes forever, and just shattering any chance of unity or internal reform, and he was willing to do anything to stop it.
And when Gandhi said anything, he meant it. He was about to raise the stakes to a life-or-death level. This political disagreement was about to become a full-blown national crisis, with the entire country watching, holding its breath.
And things just escalated so fast. The award is announced in August. On September 20th, from his prison cell in Yerwada, Gandhi begins a fast unto death. Suddenly, the clock is ticking. For 4 frantic days, leaders are scrambling back and forth between Gandhi and Ambedkar, desperately trying to broker some kind of compromise before it's too late.
I mean, can you even imagine the pressure on Dr. Ambedkar? If Gandhi died, the entire country would likely blame him. He was in the fight for the political survival of his people. But suddenly, The actual physical survival of the Mahatma was hanging in the balance. The weight of it all must have been just immense.
And you can bet those negotiations were unbelievably tense. Leaders from all over the country rushed to Poona, debating, arguing, pleading over every single word of a potential deal, a deal that had to save Gandhi's life while also trying to define the future of a nation.
So, what did they finally agree on? Well, on September 24th, the Poona Pact was signed. Gandhi ended his fast, and the nation breathed a sigh of relief. The immediate crisis was over, but the debate over what it all meant, that was just getting started.
Okay, so let's look at the deal itself. It was a huge compromise, and Ambedkar gives up the demand for separate electorates. In return, they create a system of joint electorates, but with reserved seats. Now, on paper, this looks like a big win. The number of reserved seats for the depressed classes more than doubled, from 71 all the way to 148. But, and this is a huge but, the way they were elected changed completely. It became a two-step process. First, Dalit voters would elect a panel of their own candidates. But then, the entire electorate, including all the caste Hindus, would vote to pick the final winner from that panel.
And right there, that's the crucial trade-off. Yes, they got way more seats, but they lost the political autonomy that separate electorates would have given them. Under the Poona Pact, any Dalit leader who wanted to win ultimately had to get the approval of the much larger caste Hindu majority. So they traded real political independence for a larger number of seats.
And the fallout from that trade-off? Wow, it's huge and it is so complicated. On one hand, it did prevent that formal political split that Gandhi was so afraid of. But on the other, it created this system where many argue that Dalit representatives are beholden to non-Dalit voters. In fact, Dr. Ambedkar himself would later say he deeply regretted signing the pact, feeling he was coerced into it. And that's why, even now, people fiercely debate whether the Poona Pact was a moment of necessary compromise or a political tragedy.
And that brings us right back to our big question, the Poona Pact. Was it a pragmatic compromise that saved a life and maybe even saved the unity of the nation at a critical moment? Or was it the moment that a real chance for political revolution was given away, setting a course that India's democracy is still grappling with to this very day? That remains one of the most powerful and